How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lo4f, and today I'm going to go and do a contract. It's in the second set of contracts, I believe, called the Unfinished Business at the Plant. And what I need to do, go and get one lot of metal beams, one lot of service spare parts, and one cargo container, and then drop it off to some kind of plant in the top right-hand corner of the map. Yeah, I believe in this, like I say, the second set of contracts. That's the factory. And yeah, the service spare parts, it kind of says you can pick them up from the garage, sort of near where I start, but you can actually get the service spare parts from places that are called like the service hubs on this map, and there's also one at the top end as well, so you don't actually kind of have to travel over the ferry or cut over that shallow part of the water or whatever. Yeah, so I'm going to go to the top left-hand corner, grab the metal beams, and then there to grab the cargo container, and then there to grab the service spare parts, and then kind of cut across the top of the map, over the bridge, yeah, into the plant. I don't know why I was moving the camera there. Probably just to explain that you can get the service spare parts from both places. It's a bit of a longer mission, this one. No, that sounds worse than it is. I'm just saying, drive-wise, there's potentially a bit of distance. So personally, I went for a truck that's at least got a high range gearbox, just so I can actually get my foot down a little bit. Otherwise I probably would have took the 612H out, which, yeah, funnily enough, as I mentioned that, I've come up with all sorts of different names for it, and then as Justin Lynch was saying the other day, I name everything that doesn't even have a nickname, and then when something does have a nickname I call it by its code name. So obviously the 612H, yeah, it was the Mastodon DLC. The reason I wasn't calling it the Mastodon is I basically got muddled up and just thought AGL's version, you know how you've got, like, say, Fox's mods with like the Azov Iceberg. It's obviously called the Azov Antarctic, but he's called a version of the Iceberg. I just for some reason was like, oh, the Mastodon is like AGL's version, and then yeah, I was like, oh yeah, it's as Justin Lynch pointed out, it's just the Mastodon DLC. I've decided I'm going to call it Steve, and the only reason I have for that, I must know them as well. I hear this story every few years, I don't even know how, and I forget really quickly every time. But someone my sister knows that I think I know as well, they just had a greyhound called Steve, and I think it's funny, and that is it. That is my best reason. I just heard that again the other day, as, again, it must be someone we know. I can't remember for the life of me who already. But yeah, just imagine a greyhound called Steve. And I'm not like, it's simultaneously a ridiculous and a brilliant name for a dog, especially a greyhound called Steve. And yeah, that is honestly my best reason. Not really much of one, but that's it. So the Mastodon 612H, I'm calling it Steve. So we've got what? Dolphin, Bruce, John and Steve, and goddamn horse, of course, and probably some others I've named here, there and everywhere. But yeah, Steve is sticking. Steve the Greyhound Mastodon 612H6 truck just rolls off the tongue. Yeah, I ended up choosing this Voron AE. Partly, if you've seen near the beginning of the clip, I was trying to fire the loaf over the mountain, and that took a little while. And then I always do this. I built a loaf, and I wasted weight. I go through every single colour option I can paint a loaf, and I do it every time, and I'm like, yep, I've already got one that colour. Already got one that colour. Go through the whole list. I'm like, god damn it, what colour? I don't know. I sit there for way too long trying to pick a colour, and then yeah, so I painted him his custom colour this time, and by that, yeah, between that, I'd kind of burnt into a bit of time I was going to use, so I then started looking through my garage, like, which truck do I want? And yeah, I was like, sod it, I'll easily sit here for another hour just flicking through 400 trucks in my garage and wondering which one I'm going to pick and customise and all the rest of it. Thankfully, the other day, for some reason, it might have been on the gameplay and review when I was doing for the Kenworth, while I was there at one of the Russian maps, I just quickly, yeah, in Zimnogorsk, I nipped into the shop and grabbed a load of Russian trucks, because obviously it won't let you buy them on, like, when you're here. And yeah, one of them, oh no, because this was already near enough done up, so I must have found it somewhere in my garage from, I'd probably recovered it. Do you know what, I bet it is. I recovered it off Phase 9 because of all the glitching going on. It was in an attempt to ease that a little bit. Yeah, overall, I like objectively the Voron AE is a very good truck. I personally just don't like the steering; feels very slow on it. And strictly speaking, it's probably no slower than some of the bigger trucks. But the bigger trucks, you just naturally know it's probably going to be a bit slower steering. This feels in every other way like quite a small, nimble, agile truck. It just, if I had to pick this or the original Tayga, I pretty much always go for the original Tayga just based on I prefer the steering. But yeah, objectively, this is actually a pretty decent truck. I got the saddle, well, saddle low, sorry, the step deck trailer. You'd need 5 slots of cargo. You got the metal beams as 2 slot, the cargo containers 2 slot, and then the service spare parts is 1. So you're gonna obviously you can do all sorts of combinations. You could have a sideboard bed and take a ramped flatbed. I could have brought a sideboard semi trailer. The reason I'm mainly mentioning it is between the Voron AE and this step deck, it sits pretty low, and it's not really been any issue up to now, to be fair. But where I'm about to sort of start veering off to the left, there's routes and everything, and I know there is among various other places on these maps. And at that point, the actual step deck bit of the trailer starts getting caught on the roots, basically. And yeah, like I say, if maybe if I had a bigger truck, like for example, if I did bring the Mastodon just as its chassis sits higher, apologies, like a little tiny second glitch there. Yeah, as it does sit higher, it probably would sit the step deck high enough that it wouldn't be much of an issue. It's not to say this truck's small. I believe it's got like 50, or is it? Might even possibly be 51-inch tyres, which is decent for this size truck. And yeah, overall, like I say, engine power, everything. But yeah, just once I start getting hooked on, in fact, here's a perfect example of something coming up. These telegraph pole things that are lying across the road, there is a mission to fix them. It's a pretty simple one as well. I think it's in the top set of contract. Funnily enough, I was thinking to myself right now, these have actually been pretty fair and everything, as long as when I've drove over them slowly, they haven't trollishly tried to delete my suspension like they sometimes do, even at 1 mile an hour. And then yeah, just as I was sort of saying that to myself, the step deck part of the trailer got hooked on it. I just a little 20-second edit there. I tried flooring it for a little bit just to see if the trailer would bump over, but it didn't, so I'm basically going to have to go around the long way. And yeah, that's a good example of, it was pretty close, but just the hitbox angle on that bit of the step deck as well is so sharp and pronounced, it really does hook into stuff. I think they may have even tweaked the hitbox on it or something, whether on purpose or by accident, I don't know, but that's one thing I remember pretty specifically is like why this trailer climbed the list and became one of my favourite trailers back years ago, was it didn't really catch the lip of the trailer like that. It just kind of slid over everything, and it ended up acting more like a sled, really. How like you just everything it's scuffed on, even because the trailer does sit low, so it did catch a lot of things in the scheme of things. But yeah, mud, the roads, rocks, it just kind of bump and slide over them, whereas now it definitely hooks in more. Yeah, so just I took a step deck, so I wanted to go goddamn horse on me, and it actually at some point theoretically I probably could have made it without, but I was going to say the fuel I did actually dip into at some point. So this Voron, I suppose again it was quite a longer trek than I was thinking really, but this Voron does, either this drinks a bit, or I couldn't have been driving that long, so the video's not crazy long. I suppose yeah, we're about halfway on the fuel now, but I've already gone basically right up the middle of the map and then over to the, now as near as makes no difference, the top left corner. It's the same place here where you get that quid pro quo mission, and yeah, get the metal beams from here. And yeah, in the end, the main reason I chose this mission is like on the live stream, as Justin Lynch said, which is a good point, and it's generally, yeah, good advice to follow, is at the minute I've only got about 6-ish contracts that I could pick from anyway, because the majority of them are sort of locked until I complete various missions or contracts. And yeah, at that point, with the missions and contracts available, this one actually unlocks, like once I deliver this stuff to the plant in the top corner, it unlocks, I think it's like concrete slabs and concrete blocks or something. It's not loads of different materials, but it basically says, you know, when you do it, like, congratulations, sort of now we can get on with fixing all the stuff in the region. So it's obviously going to be a pretty important place. So yeah, it's just one of them, like, I may as well prioritise the missions that actually unlock stuff as rewards afterwards, instead of just being, you know, purely like you unlock money and XP. Yeah, right now I believe there's either the trailer's caught on a rock or it is some roots going on in there, because I can just tell by the way it's behaving. The way it just stops is not really how the Voron dies when it's struggling in mud. It doesn't just stop dead like that. I noticed quickly, this is why I stopped now. See those little shrubs and trees next to me? They're not actually bringing up winch points. I brought them up and you can see it's going to the trees and the telegraph pole kind of over behind those rocks. I just wanted to throw that out, that it's early days, I've not tested it really, I just noticed it kind of as it was happening. It's pretty cool if they've actually tweaked it a little bit, you know, just so it doesn't offer you every stupid little tree, bush and shrub going that just pops out of the ground instantly anyway. Again, the goddamn horse, he is actually one of the few that uses them and doesn't necessarily just pluck them out of the ground. But yeah, as far as trucks go, they pop out of the ground way too easy. So yeah, they may have just missed making them have winch points. But it's I thought I'd mention it, because if they have done it on purpose, it's certainly a step in the right direction, because they are essentially just a waste of time. And you can see, yeah, these telegraph poles, they're actually kept catching me a lot more than I was hoping for, really. They're not even really difficult, they're just obviously slap bang in the way of, like, and there's usually trees to the left or right, or sort of death mud or whatever, so it's, if you can help it, it's nice to, well, preferably drive over them. But I mean, that time it didn't, I don't even think it hooked the step deck part of my trailer. I think it got the first axle, which again in and of itself doesn't really behave, it's a bit like the ramped flatbed, the tyres are too small in a way, they don't really behave like round tyres, they more behave like it's a square hitbox. I wanted to see if I could climb up there. I don't think it's a case of like the Voron wouldn't be able to. I think it's just the front bumper kind of dug in on the ground before it could really bite in with its front wheels and climb up. But yeah, just move over to the left there and it, I mean, walked up there for fun. I mean, yeah, overall it's a good truck worth taking out. All I would do probably different if I was going to do this mission again is either, well, I mean, that would kind of negate the point of saying the Voron's good. Either take a different truck that's bigger, so the step deck sits higher, or do it again with the Voron, but take, yeah, the sideboard semi-trailer. Which overall just sits a bit more compact, a bit higher. I'll probably get away with it a little bit easier in this. See, I'm sure somewhere around here, I'm pretty convinced I got hooked on, yeah, the roots as well, because again, the Voron, just generally with good trucks, they don't really throw in the towel like they just stop dead. They kind of, when you're flooring it, they start crawling forward slowly, even if it's very slowly, even in like the death mud section I do on the review videos on Northport. If you, yeah, every vehicle is actually moving really, really slowly, near enough. So just when you get stopped dead, you know you've usually got hooked on the terrain, which I think happened in that case. For some reason I just had a gut feeling that I was able to push my luck on that one. I knew it was going to make the trailer cut back over, and it let me get away with it, thankfully. It bounced over. And yeah, you can see at this point I have nailing the fuel quite a lot as well. In high gear, that kind of chewed its way into the ground. That didn't really help. Which again, not really Voron capability wise, but just because I'd kind of dug the rear axles in, then it sank the trailer down to where I think that found someone else to snag on. And when I'm going along now, there is somewhere, I did it again, like if you follow the road, it's basically like death mud. You're best off, if I swerved off to the right now and ran over those dead trees, you can sail through there in high gear, no problem. Yeah, here, if you follow the road, it is just a patch of death mud. I keep doing it this way every time. I always remember too late. But yeah, thankfully there is like immovable trees within reach, so not really much of an issue. And even so far, I mean, I've already driven up like the middle of the map. That seems to, as far as like heading to the top of the map, that's going to be the main obvious choice of route. But it's actually quite a nice drive, not just scenic wise, but there's a couple of different, there's a little like waterlogged rocky section, there's a few muddy sections, there's enough dirt roads to drop the hammer a bit though and get moving and kind of keep it a little bit entertaining. So it's actually quite a nice varied drive heading up the map. Obviously in theory there is other options like routes I can take, but the route up the middle, that's what she said, yeah, it's just going to be the best one. yeah, when I got the cargo container and then the cat, I swear he must hear the sound of like the loaf horn or something, because he appears on cue every single time. But yeah, he appeared, so I just saved the footage, bit of editing there. Oh, I didn't quite make it. See, back in the day, I'd probably get enough OCD about even tapping that trailer a bit to be like, nope, quit and reload the game. I want it exactly where the game had it, but yeah. I think these days, well, I suppose because the loading cogs now as well happen every like 9 odd minutes, not every minute. In theory, I could quit and reload the game now and near enough load back to like not far off the when I started the video. Worst case anyway, there is a chance it could have saved 30 seconds prior and it'll load up then. Yeah, after going there though, kind of cutting across here, same place where I sort of headed in the end to get the upgrade on that little like racetrack. Yeah, I find here, because the service area, it's obviously awkward, as in like you'd have to double back on yourself and just to save doing like reversing and all the rest of it. To be fair, it's very reversible, at least these semi-trailers aren't that bad. But yeah, I decided to... Well, when I was exploring the map, I drove over this car, and then I figured out, it might have been in the live stream, that the car is movable. And it was working fine, but as you can see, it was just so happened, like the front nose ground clearance or whatever of the Voron is decent enough to where I basically just kept bumping up the car. It's one of those rare situations where something like Bruce, for example, with his low, big, fat chin, would have not ridden over the car. It would have just pushed it out of the way for fun. But yeah, it's one of them rare situations where having like the better clearance actually bit me a little bit. I honestly now I wasn't even sure what I was stuck on at this point. I was even thinking, is it my trailer that's hooked? But then whatever it was, it popped out of there and we're good to go. So I'm not sure, but it looked like my whole truck was touching the floor at that point. Yeah, service spare part, like I said, you can grab them from either location, but I just found that I'm generally heading this way anyway, other than just cutting off the road and knocking that car out of the way. I'm pretty much staying on the same route, so it seemed like the quicker option. And oh yeah, I think it was when I said like my cat turned up and that, I transferred the low fuel over to the Voron. I believe it had about 44 or 43 litres left. I probably... yeah, well technically, I mean I put 120 litres from the loaf to the Voron, so it'd be bloody close, because I'm on 125 now, but there is a fuel station coming up, so I probably could have just made it. Bearing in mind, if I didn't have the fuel, I wouldn't have dicked around as much with that car, just being... I wouldn't have been as frivolous with just revving the engine and all that, so I probably could have just about made it here, but I mean, again, plenty of reasons to get yourself a loaf. He did have the fuel on him. And then now, that's why I just edit there. I went in the fuel station, filled up the Voron, and restocked the loaf's fuel tank. That fuel station, by comparison, the box to the fuel station is way off the road. You have to drive in there, and they've put like some concrete bollard things right in the middle. So it's just one of them. You're not even going to really be able to like sweep into that petrol station and sweep back out. You're best off just doing what I did, I reckon. Where like, hopefully you don't need it that much when you got a ramp flatbed. And if you do, you're probably best off just disconnecting that at the road, driving in, reversing back up and reconnecting it, because yeah, driving in and reversing out seems to be the better option. Whereas like I was saying, the other fuel station that's actually pretty near to the garage, the box is basically at the edge of the road, so you can just do a drive-by fueling and yeah, not get caught out. It's more like, say, the ramp flatbeds are a nightmare to reverse, so... And in that sense, they've kind of created a situation there where you're sort of going to be forced to have to try and reverse a ramped flatbed, which is a pain in the ass. And as well, I've got the chained on this, and this is quite a good example of that. I mean, as I was driving along, it's hard on this game anyway to say, like, for definite if one's objectively better than the other and all the rest of it, but I personally find that the chained, yeah, buy in more. There's more times that you'll see where I start to get slowed down, but then before it says, you know, stalling in high range and all that, you just keep it floored and it actually does find more grip and you fire back up to speed. And I just find, and I found it in the tyre testing video years ago as well, it was more like 8 times out of 10 it would do that with the chained, versus probably 2 or 3 times out of 10 it'd do it with the muds. The muds tend to, once you slip in and you start losing speed, they do tend to, I think, give up quicker to where you now just need to drop it, say, back into auto, let it wind up that way, and then you can go back to high. But yeah, the chained are actually pretty nice for kind of biting in, finding the grip, and firing you back up to speed without just kicking you out of high gear. And I think even here, right, it might be a perfect example there. I'm going slower, but I'm flooring it, and when I get to the other side, you can see I sort of find the grip and it fires back up. No, that's not to say that the muds never do that or anything. I just found, generally speaking, yeah, it was more likely to happen. Like I said in the tyre testing video, I went down like a riverbed and up the other side, and it was basically going up the other side was most of the time with muds it would wheel spin, stall and kick me out of high gear. Most of the time with chained it would bite in and not kick me out of high gear, and obviously I was trying to do a speed run on that contest, so that was literally just always the difference between like a competitive time or not. Funnily enough though, almost got here in about now, decided to bottom out. I don't even know, it might, oh no, it probably is a rock I'm propped on. I was going to say it could even be sort of death mud and I ran out of luck, but looking at the way the trailer sort of tilted there, I probably did get beached on a rock a bit. Yeah, this is the warehouse thing. I've got a... I'm not sure why... Oh yeah, sorry, I was honking to try and destroy them pallets, and funnily enough, I already just must have known. Yeah, it didn't destroy them, they didn't like move and jump out of the way, it caught the trailer. We're here, we made it. Always go a bit slow. A bit slow and easy after a phase update, just to make sure I don't like triple mash the buttons in 1 second and cause the game to crash. Yeah, as I believe Mark Rowe pointed out in the live stream, the animations are back, and to be fair, this is actually a pretty decent, thorough animation. Can't knock it. 10 out of 10, would try again. Yeah, 10,000 odd money, not terrible. Again, it's actually, so far, it was a nicely laid out mission. You didn't really have to do too much doubling back and all that. It felt like you could make a logical plan to complete the mission. So yeah, overall, like I say, good, nice start. I've unlocked this plant. Now I've got like slabs and concrete blocks or whatever to, I assume that's unlocked now, a load more contracts. And then yeah, that was about it for today, but I was just messing around, like I said. When you start the game again, when it loads up, for some reason it keeps resetting this crane, so I managed to get into a situation where it had glitched into the loaf. It's been firing the loaf off the crane, so I'm going to try and fire him over that mountain. We'll see. This is a bit of progress. Ended up turning into, I don't know, some kind of complex dolphin and loaf mating ritual going on. I think the loaf's trying to seduce a female that's actually 2,000 times bigger than him. She'll emerge from the water any minute. Not a lot of people know this, but he's actually the only thing known to seduce the Kraken. So when he ghosted her, that's why she's mad. Takes out Captain Birdseye. Story as old as time. Yeah, the reason I did kind of part leave this in, other than this was me attempt at firing a loaf over the mountain so far. But yeah, I was just saying about the like lock-in physics as well in this game, and that it's just being a little bit more trollish, I've noticed. Nothing too crazy, to be honest. It's only really making an appearance when I keep kind of messing around like this, which is probably above and beyond what you strictly need to do, but still, I like to. Yeah, the loaf is kind of, it's now stuck to the floor, and I don't really know why, but when I press X to essentially detach the winch, it kind of pings off as it is. It's like as if it was winched to the floor. I don't really know what's going on with that. And then you can see, even with the dolphin, even though I'm in the dolphin now operating the crane, the physics are locked, and then now it just suddenly kind of releases and tilts. So yeah, it's been a bit odd, but that's about it. It's just a little heads up, but nothing too crazy. Yeah, that's about it for today though. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks for Patreon members. Get yourself a loaf because he's a goddamn beast, and I'll be back soon.